My name is Harold Thompson. I am 73 years old, and I live in a small town called Millbrook. In the state of New York, I worked for almost 40 years at Oak Hill Cemetery. A place that became more than just a workplace for MIT was like a second home. I remember my first day vividly. In April 1975, I was 28 years old. Newly hired as a maintenance assistant. The cemetery was vast, with over 200 acres of land, filled with old gravestones and century-old trees that seemed to hold silent stories. My initial job was simple: mow the grass, clean the graves, prepare plots, and keep everything organized. In the early years, the work was heavy, but I had always been a strong man, used to manual labor since I was young. Over time, I became familiar with every corner of that place. Each gravestone had a story. Each grave held memories of lives that once rested there. I learned to respect that space, not as a place of sadness, but as a sanctuary of memories. The years went by, and I became something of a guardian of that place. I knew each family, each story behind the names engraved on the stones. I remember one specific case that deeply marked me. In 1986, a local family, the Williamsons, lost their youngest son in a car accident. The young man, named Michael, was only 22 years old. His father, Robert Williamson, approached me days later, asking to personally choose the location where his son would be buried. We walked together through the cemetery. He wanted a spot with a beautiful view where he could see the sunset. We chose a place near an old oak tree, overlooking the mountains in the background. Every time Robert came to visit his son, he would bring me coffee, and we would sit and talk about life. My job wasn't just to keep the cemetery clean. It was to preserve memories, to be a silent guardian of the stories that rested there. Each plot I prepared, each gravestone I cleaned, was an act of respect. The most challenging years were during the harsh New York winters. I remember mornings where the temperature dropped to 15 degrees below zero, and I needed to be there, breaking the ice, preparing the spaces for potential burials. In 1992, something happened that would change my perspective on my work. A lady named Elizabeth Carter, the widow of a World War II veteran, approached me to restore her husband's grave. Jack Carter had been a war hero, decorated for bravery. I spent weeks restoring that gravestone. Each letter, each detail was carefully cleaned and restored. Elizabeth offered me hot tea every time she saw me working. She told me stories about Jack, about how they met, about the war years. At that moment, I realized my work went far beyond simply maintaining a cemetery. I was a guardian of memories, a storyteller of the silent narratives that rested there. The years went by, and I specialized. I learned techniques for restoring old gravestones, knowledge that few had. My experience became respected throughout the region. In 2005, something unusual happened at Oak Hill Cemetery. A group of local historians discovered that part of our cemetery was built over an ancient Native American settlement. This completely changed our perspective on the site. I worked side by side with archaeologists and anthropologists. I helped map sensitive areas, identifying spots where we might find historical remnants. My detailed knowledge of every inch of that land was crucial for the excavations. We uncovered fragments of pottery, some stone tools, and even remnants of campfires dating back over 300 years. It was as if each layer of soil told a different story. The archaeologists were impressed with my local knowledge. By this time, I was nearing retirement. My wife, Margaret, always said I loved that cemetery more than our own home. Perhaps she was right. The last years of work were the most significant. I was not just an employee, but a guardian of memories. Each grave, each gravestone had a story to tell, and I was the silent interpreter of those narratives. My retirement in 2010 was a bittersweet moment. After 40 years at Oak Hill Cemetery, leaving that place felt like abandoning a part of myself. The farewell ceremony was emotional. Families from several generations that I had assisted over the years attended. The town mayor presented me with a plaque of honor, recognizing my work and dedication. I remember holding back tears when I saw so many people who passed through my life over those years. I was not just an employee, I was a guardian of memories. Today, at 73 years old, I still visit the cemetery weekly. I talk with the current staff, share stories, and advise on preservation. My wife, Margaret, always jokes that I can't completely disconnect. Young people today don't understand the value of preserving memories. For me, each gravestone was a book of untold stories. Each name engraved represented a life, a dream, an interrupted story. In the silence of that place, I learned that death is not the end, but merely a passage. And my work has always been to keep alive the memories of those who have gone. In recent years, I have dedicated myself to writing a book about my experience at Oak Hill Cemetery. Each page is a piece of my life. Each chapter a story kept for decades in silence and respect. My granddaughter, Sarah, a young historian, helps me organize the manuscripts. She digitizes old photographs, documents the stories I share. Together, we are creating a historical archive about that place that was my life. Sometimes, when silence falls over my house, I close my eyes and can smell the damp earth, hear the sound of birds in the cemetery, feel the weight of each story I have kept for so long. Oak Hill was not just a job, it was my vocation, my quiet mission to preserve memories.